Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alex from the Buren Conservation District. I'd like to welcome you all to our third Backyard Symposium. This is a week-long webinar series designed to help landowners of all sizes bring their yards to life as a beautiful, sustainable part of our environment. From backyards and lots in urban areas to rural homesteads, green space is beneficial to our mental and physical health and for the animals and plants that we share our space with. We're hoping you can learn actionable, approachable ways to make your space a little bit greener. It seems like we're having some issues with the chat. Not something we're going to be able to fix today, but by default, everyone is muted and video sharing is turned off. If you have any questions, you can use the Q&A section on the bottom panel to ask questions, and we'll answer those at the end of the webinar. Okay. And now I'm going to turn it over to Abbie. Who's going to talk to us about plant identification 101, how to cure plant blindness.
All right, thanks so much. I'm going to share my screen here. Will you enable that again for me, Alex?
Good.
All right. Yeah. How's that look?
Looks good.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Alex, for the intro. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today to talk about plant identification. We're going real basic here, but we're going to talk about how you can approach a plant, how you can look at it, and make sure you're taking up the information so you can figure out who the heck it is. First, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about what I do specifically. I am the strike team coordinator for the Southwest by Southwest Corner CISMA. A CISMA is a cooperative invasive species management area, and we're kind of the go-to source for all invasive species, whether it's education about invasive species to the public, or private landowners, or management of invasive species themselves. We work with municipalities, schools, land conservancies, homeowner associations, all sorts. We have, the state of Michigan has 22 different CISMAs, and they're all run a little bit differently. But if you are tuning in from Van Buren County, you are a part of my CISMA. Me and Alex run it together, and we cover Van Buren, Berrien, and Cass counties. Just so I know we're all on the same page, because I will be talking about both invasive species and native species today, and I'll point those out as we go. I do want to say that an invasive species is a very particular thing, and it is made up of two, it's defined by two main things. First, an invasive species is not from our area. So it could be Southern United States, or it could be across the globe in Japan, but it is not from the Great Lakes region. And in addition to that, it does cause harm to the environment, the economy, and or human health. So an example would be the spotted lanternfly, like you see in the middle picture there. That is an invasive species. It's not from our area. It's not from North America, and it causes major economic harm in the form of ruining grape crops. That's in contrast to something like poison ivy. That is a problem for human health, causing a dermatitis, but it is native to our area, and so it is not considered an invasive species. So we'll be, like I said, going back and forth about what is an invasive species here and what's native. But first, I wanted to we'll dive into this idea of plants. Looks like the chat is up and working. This is going to be an interactive thing. Get the brain juices flowing. So first, in the chat, tell me what you see here. Tell me what this is a picture of. I'm going to give this a few seconds for people to give me some thoughts. Take a drink of water. This is a lot less fun for me if nobody does anything. Yes, a big old caterpillar. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Cool. Thanks, guys. So this is indeed a picture of a caterpillar. This is a moth caterpillar, particularly the Cecropia moth. But in addition to that, it's also a shrub. There's a shrub in the back. That's a native buckthorn. That's our alder-leaved buckthorn. And this is an example of plant blindness. When I first heard about the term plant blindness, I, to be honest, thought it was a joke about hearing blind plants, but it is not. The plant blindness is a studied thing where humans often look at the animal in a picture or out in the world. We're much more animal focused, and we often just totally miss the green that is entirely around us. When you start noticing some of the patterns and the differing characteristics of plants, you realize how often you truly are surrounded by them. And once you tap into those characteristics a little bit, know and notice them, you start to realize that you've got a lot of friends around you at all times, no matter what. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, trying to cure this plant blindness. So by the end of it, you're not just looking at the people in a photo, but you start to see the plants around them. And I've noticed that in my own experience, and it really is fulfilling. So let's see. This is going to advance for me. So at this moment, we're just looking at a lot of plants, and it's really hard to do it species by species. There are tens of thousands of individual species in Michigan alone. And so where would you even start? All of these look so different, and it's so difficult to get started on identifying species. So today we're just going to focus on main characteristics. We're going to start with the stem. We're going to look at some how to look at a stem. We're going to talk about the main characteristics that define leaves and how to look at those. And then we'll finish up with flowers. And then I'll give you some examples of specific families to practice with. So first, we'll start with stems. Stems, primarily, as far as what I can show you in pictures, are of two main groups. First is woody, and then herbaceous. Woody, like a tree, like a shrub, like some vines. You've seen wood before. It's the hard stuff on the outside of a plant. And then that in contrast to our herbaceous plants, like this beach pea here, or if you can imagine a dandelion is herbaceous. You can the stem is malleable, and there's no woody part to that plant. If you're approaching a plant, you can look at its entirety and say, is any part of this woody or entirely herbaceous? That can be your first dividing question. Then we'll talk about leaves, and with leaves, there's a lot to look at. There's always a lot to look at, but really we're going to be breaking it down into 4 main characteristics. First is arrangement, how the leaves are oriented relative to each other along a stem. The shape of the leaves, if you look outside, how many different shapes of a leaf you see. We'll talk about the margins. We'll talk about the margins of the leaf, which is basically just the outline of the leaf. And then the leaves complexity, basically how is it structured? Sometimes they get a little bit more complex. First, with arrangement, when you look at a leaf that's along a stem, look at the base of the leaf. How does it connect to the stem, and are there other leaves at that location? So one arrangement for leaves that you'll see on mints or maples is this opposite arrangement. Here we have, if you guys can see my cursor, can you see my cursor? Yeah. The leaf over here is exactly opposite from another leaf. They both meet at this center point on the stem, and they have a buddy. Opposites have buddies. That versus something like alternate. You see a leaf, and right where it meets the stem, he doesn't have a buddy, not right next to him, not at the base of the leaf where it meets the stem. Instead, there's another leaf just further down, somewhere else on the stem. It doesn't necessarily have to come out of the opposite side. It's just where where the leaf meets the stem. Is there one leaf there? Then it's alternate. And then there's the fun ones like whorl, where you're looking at that one point where the leaves meet the stem. And if there's 3 or more leaves, then we're looking at whorled. A good example of this would be like your Christmas tree. If you got a real Christmas tree this year, you might have noticed that the stems, the branches all come out at the same point. That's considered whorled. And then of course, basal. That's when the stems or the leaves all are at the base, right at the ground, and they all come out mostly from the same point. A lot of lilies are like this. Let's look at this in some photos. So first, we'll look back at opposite. You can see we're looking at a leaf here, and of course, right across from it, he's got his buddy. They're both attached pretty much at the same part of the stem, and there's one on either side. And you see that with the branches too. The way that I can tell that in the winter with a maple, that a tree is a maple, is because I can look up into the canopy of the tree and see this sort of branching structure, the arrangement of the branches. Here's the main stem, and then there's one branch coming out here, and then it's buddy, and pretty much the same point coming out from the other side. And comparing that to alternate, where you go up the stem and it only has one at each point where the leaf meets the stem. It's just one leaf coming out. And then whorl's always obvious. That one's got so many leaves at one point. You can see it here. All of these leaves, these individual leaves are coming out from this one point on the stem. And then of course the basal leaves. Another example of this would be a dandelion, where you see the little leaf stem or the little flower stem coming out of a basal arrangement of leaves, just like this one here. You can see these. This is the stem of a flower, but all the leaves are down here at the base. All right, next we're going to talk about shape. So I really like the different shapes of leaves. There are so many different shapes, a ton of words, but we're really going to focus on 4. Mainly whenever I am trying to identify a plant, the words that are used to describe the leaf shape is often some version of these 4 shapes that we're going to talk about. First is heart-shaped. That one's easy. We all know what a heart looks like. Sometimes a leaf is almost exactly this shape, the shape of a heart, like you draw it on a Valentine's Day card, but sometimes it's a little bit more abstract. Largely what you're looking for is this little point at the end. Generally it comes down to a point, and these 2, what we're calling lobes at the top. We see the leaf stem. This is the leaf stem, and then there's 2 lobes on either side of it. And then there's egg-shaped. Exactly that. We all know what an egg looks like, but notice that this is where the stem is, and the wider part of in this case, a leaf, the wider part of the egg is toward the stem side. Relate that to the opposite, an upside down egg shape, which is one of my favorite shapes, just because I think it's so silly, is just that the wider side of the egg or the leaf is away from the stem, right there. And then of course there's also linear leaves, like on a willow tree. Can be as thin as considered thread-like, or they can be wider. And we'll take a look at a picture of that in the next slide here. So this first picture is a picture of Chinese yam. This is an example of an invasive species that I would like to know about. If you see it, if you see this, this is certainly something that we want to know about, because it is a pretty bad invasive species. But Chinese yam is certainly heart-shaped. We can see those two lobes on either side of the stem. Right here is where the stem meets the leaf. And they have those two lobes on either side, and they sort of come down to a point down at the end. And then we have the egg shape. You can see that an egg could fit right on top. And the wider base of the egg, of the leaf, hits the closer to the stem. So the widest part of the leaf is closer to the stem. And you can see how that differs from the upside down egg shape over here, where the widest part of the leaf is further away from the stem. The halfway point is about here, and it's on the outer edge of the halfway point. The halfway point is about here, and it's on the inner edge of the halfway point. And then we have the linear leaves. Linear basically just means that it is much longer than it is wide. And that could vary, like I said, from something like thread-like to something like this, where it's a little bit more wide at the base. And when you approach a leaf, it could have any or all of these characteristics. It could be long, and it could have lobes at the end, like a heart shape, or it could be wide on one side of the leaf, making it an upside down egg shape, but also linear. But generally, these are the foundational shapes that make up a leaf. Next, we have the leaf margins. So a margin is basically just if you were to draw the outline of a leaf, how would you draw it? Would it be smooth, or would it be jagged like teeth? Or would you be drawing in and out to make these lobes? A smooth leaf, like the one pictured here, this is the mile-a-minute weed. We are lucky to not have this in our SWxSW. This is an invasive species, a pretty bad one. Our neighboring SWxSW does have it over in Calhoun County. And if you see it, I definitely want to know about it. But mile-a-minute weed, the leaf is a great example of a smooth margin. It is generally, it's a straight line if you were to draw an outline of it. It's mostly smooth, but there's not any major teeth like in this European river birch, that if you were to run your finger along the edge of this, you would feel those little spikes, the little teeth throughout. And then of course, there's also something like this hepatica here that has lobed leaves. This is an individual leaf, and if you were to pick that leaf and take a look at it and trace the outline of it, you'd be moving in and out, following the lobe and the indentation. There are more margin types, but generally these are the main margin types. It varies on how many teeth there are and how many lobes there are. An individual leaf can be a combination of these. As you can see with the lobed hepatica here at the end, it mostly does have smooth margins. It doesn't have teeth, but it's also got these lobes as well. And then finally, the hardest one that we're going to be looking at here is leaf complexity. Leaf complexity, we're basically looking at how a leaf forms. So a leaf could form just a simple, typical looking leaf where it's one page essentially, and that attaches to a stem and that attaches to the branch. However, leaves can be compound as well. Compound basically just means that this entire leaf, this is considered an entire leaf, as well as this is considered an entire leaf. Think about walnuts or chestnuts. The leaves of those trees are both considered compound. So when this leaf comes out of its bud, it's coming out just like this. The bud holds this entire leaf. And we'll take a look at how we can determine that in this next slide. So this is an example of a simple leaf. Now, whenever I'm looking at a branch and I'm trying to determine if something's a simple leaf or a compound leaf, you can look at the very base of the leaf stem here. What we're looking at this little guy right here is a leaf bud, and he's right at the axis, right where the leaf meets the branch. And in that bud is just another little leaf, and that leaf is just one page, like right here. And you can kind of see that in this as well. So in this picture is another compound leaf. All of this is born out of a single bud. So right here, right at the base of where the leaf meets the stem is a little tiny bud. And that one bud holds this entire thing. So how this is useful when you're looking at a plant is you can decide, you can get a little bit closer to generally the type of plant that you're looking at, if you know it has these compound leaves or if it has these simple leaves. So let's do a quiz really quick. I've got some people here participating today. Let's start with, let's see, is this herbaceous or woody? What do we think? Seeing something, somebody says woody, herbaceous, wood, herbaceous. Awesome, cool. So this actually is woody. The reason this is woody is this picture up here, probably not the best. This is a maple, and so this is a tree. It'll eventually become a tree. This little guy at this point, even though he's small and has a lot of soft tissue kind of leaves right here, he will eventually be a wooded tree, and so he is considered woody. And the arrangement, we're going to be looking mostly at this picture up here. Are we looking at opposite? Are the leaves opposite each other? Are the leaves alternating along the branch? Are there more than one leaf at a location along the branch, or is it basal? What would you guys say? Any guesses? Opposite. I'm seeing mostly opposite. Cool. Yes, that is correct. In fact, like I said earlier, this is a maple. All maples are opposite. Anything in that maple group will be opposite branches, and that's how you can identify them, even in the winter. What about the margins? Smooth, toothed, lobed, a combination of those. Okay, yeah, answer in the chat. You can answer in the chat here. If you click, let's see, where is it for me? In the little, yeah, if you click the chat button, then you'll be able to participate. Love to have you. I'm seeing, let's see, toothed and lobed, toothed, combo, toothed and lobed, toothed. Excellent. Yes, exactly. So this is toothed and lobed. You can see the teeth all along the margin. If I was going to be outlining this, so I was going to give it to my niece and have her outline the edge, she would draw these little teeth, little jagged marks, but then she would also be going in and out, following those lobes and indentations. Lobe and indentation, lobe and indentation. So this is both toothed and lobed. Awesome. And then complexity. Let's look at how complex this leaf is. Are we thinking this is a simple leaf? Or is this a compound leaf? To give you an idea. Yeah. Awesome. The little bud that we talked about here is right there. Oh, cool. Everybody's getting it. That makes me really happy because complexity is hard to tell. Yes, this is a simple leaf. These are all just individual leaves. Cool. I'm gonna run through this next one really quick, but please, we can go through it as well. Woody herbaceous, woody or herbaceous. This one's a little hard because it's a vine, and this picture in particular is a young vine. This one is indeed woody, and you can kind of tell because this guy is getting a little bit darker as he goes on. But what about arrangement? What are we thinking for arrangement for this one? Do we think more than one leaf at one point? Or do we think one leaf at a point? Is it whorled? Paul says alternate. Whorled. Cool. This, Paul is correct. It is alternate. And the reason for that is because we've got one point right here where a branch comes out, but then it starts a new branch. And then we've got a leaf that's coming out, but there's not at the node at the point where it meets the stem. It's just that one leaf. And so this one is alternate. What about these margins? If you were to draw around the margins of these leaves, would it be smoothed, toothed, or lobed? Nice. Yeah, this one would be smooth. We don't see any major indentations. We don't see any teeth. And then how about complexity? Are we thinking that this is one leaf or this is multiple leaves? Simple or compound? Great. You guys are killing this. Good to see that it makes more sense to you guys than I was hoping. That is a complex thing to try to teach. But this was a good example of it because see this bud we've got right here? That's this leaf came from we don't see any little buds down here. We don't see any right there. This is a compound leaf. Another giveaway that it's a compound leaf is that it ends in a leaflet right here. If there was another stem coming out from right here and continued on, then it could be a leaf. But if it ends in a leaflet like this, then we know that it has to be compound. All right, let's move on to the pretty stuff. First, okay, we're gonna look at flowers. And the way that I always approach a flower is I may move from the outside in. So the outside of the flower being the sepals. Those are usually green, leafy, like appendages on the outer edge of the flower. And then it goes to the petals, which we're all very familiar with. The stamens, which are the male part of the flower. The stamens actually create the pollen that we're sneezing at in the spring. And then the ovary. The ovary is what ends up creating the fruit. So let's first look at generally the symmetry of a flower. Flowers can be symmetrical, and meaning that whenever, no matter what way you cut them in half, they're pretty much symmetrical on either side. So think like a clock face. Cut it at any point, you're going to have a half circle. Versus something that's asymmetrical, like a violet or our own faces, you can only cut it in one way for it to be symmetrical across. If we were to cut our face like this, then it would not be symmetrical on either side. So let's look at that with some pretty examples. Over on the left here, there are a number of petals there. There's 7 petals there. But if you were to cut it in any way across, then it would generally be symmetrical. Versus the lobelia over here, like really you can only cut it across one way for it to be symmetrical. And the reason that's useful is because you can start to get to know certain families of plants just based on the symmetry of their flowers. So next, let's look at sepals. I really just want to point out that sepals exist. They're useful once you start picking up on how their patterns work. But really, they're just the little leafy green bits underneath the petals. There can be many of them, there can be only a few of them, they can be absent entirely, and that's also helpful. But generally, when you're looking at a flower, if you're sending a picture of a flower to somebody to try to help with an identification, it's useful to get a picture of the underside of the flowers to get a look at what these sepals are. Later, we'll talk about a whole family that's useful. So it's helpful to look at the sepals. Now we'll talk about the petals, the pretty bits. Counting petals can be useful. Whether they have 5, if you see a flower with 4 petals, you can narrow it down a lot. And if you see a flower with 3 petals or an arrangement of 3 petals, that can also be helpful. 5 petals, like in this buttercup here, has this 5 petals. A lot of things have 5 petals and are yellow and are small, but generally that's something to keep an eye out for and count. 4 petals is a lot less common. So it's useful to, when you see a flower with 4 petals, to start looking at some other characteristics to try to figure out what family it's in. And then flowers with 3 petals are often more grasses and plants like this flowering rush here. Flowering rush is another invasive species that if you see, I would love to know about. All right, let's talk about stamens. This is, like I said, the male part of the plant that creates the pollen. There's a lot of specific plants that have a very specific number of stamens, or it's just a lot of stamens, but generally you can put them into 2 categories. Is it countable? Can you count the number of stamens, or are there just a ton of stamens and it's not worth counting? The spring beauty on the left, a great spring ephemeral, and one of my favorites because it has pink pollen. You can see here it's just got 5 little pink stamens, as you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy, countable, versus the many that we're looking at with this cinquefoil. I'm not about to count those. I would guess more than 10. It basically are there more than 10 stamens? And that's something to take note of. And then let's look at the ovaries. Again, plants can have a lot of different variations of how they have their ovaries oriented, but generally you can look at it in terms of, is there one ovary or are there many? And what we're looking at here is the ovary is this green part in the middle of this swamp blue stripe. The ovary is just one full piece of the plant, and it's not segmented like over in this raspberry. All of these little filaments, these little strings that are coming out, the little strings that are coming out the center, those are all tiny individual ovaries. In fact, this is a raspberry plant over on the right. And if you can imagine a raspberry, how it has all of those little bumps, all of those little bumps are individual ovaries that were all independently pollinated by a pollinator. And so when you eat a single raspberry, you're actually eating many ovaries, versus like this swamp blue stripe that it would just, the fruit is just one piece of one fruit. Cool. All right, so here's another quiz. We're going to be looking at flowers this time. Open up my chat, and we're going to start with this guy here. First of all, for symmetry, would you guys say that if you cut this along any way, would it be symmetrical or would it be is this asymmetric? Symmetrical. Nice. Yes, that is correct. This would be symmetric. And how many petals are we looking at? 5 petals, that's right. What about stamens? What are we going to say for the stamens? The stamens of for this flower we're looking at are these yellow bits here. Many, lots, many. Yeah, I'm not about to count those for sure. More than 10 is what I'm going to say. And what about ovaries? What are we thinking for the ovaries in the middle? Many or just one? Excellent. Yeah, you guys are getting this. Oh, I'm so happy. Yeah, so this is a little buttercup. I believe it's a marsh marigold. It's got five petals. I got a bunch of stamens. He's got separated and many ovaries, and that's typical of this entire family, this buttercup family. All of their flowers are like that. They're typically yellow. They have 5 petals or an arrangement of 5 petals. They're always in numbers of 5 or multiples of 5. They've always got a ton of stamens, and they've always got separated and many ovaries, just like this. So just by knowing that, being able to see those characteristics from this one plant, you'd be able to recognize an entire relatively big family of flowers. And so we're going to start talking about taxonomy a little bit, because that's really what we're talking about here, with being able to identify these characteristics and starting to pick up on these patterns. We are looking at what's called taxonomy. It's basically just how plants are organized into families. So my last name is Bristol, and so I come from the Bristol family. I am really, at this point, we're just going to be looking at kingdom, family, genus, and species. The kingdom that I'm a part of is humans. And in terms of my family, I have an extended Bristol family, but then my genus is my close family, my nuclear family. And then species is me specifically. I am Abbie, and then I have my little brother and my older brother, and they are different species. But my nuclear family is the genus, and my extended family is the Bristols. So going forward, I'm gonna talk you through some specific families. So we're going to talk about 4 different families. But in those 4 families, we're going to be you will know the characteristics of 154 genera, so 154 nuclear families that you know, like me and my brothers and my parents. And then on top of that, because you know those 4 families, you'll leave with knowing the characteristics of 458 species. My entire Bristol family, basically. A reunion I don't want to go to. Let's see. So we're going to start with rose. We'll look at the stem characteristics, and then we'll look at the flower characteristics. Roses are usually woody. They can also be herbaceous. Often they have those spines on the side. Their leaves are alternate. So we just has a single leaf coming out of the point at the stem. They can be both simple and compound. Often they are compound and have these teeth on the edges. If they're not compound, often they are lobed at least. The stem isn't great for identification because it can be a lot of 2 things. But when you look at the flowers, those have a lot more key characteristics. First, it is a symmetrical flower. You'll never find a rose that's asymmetric. The sepals are important here. So earlier we talked about what sepals are. They're the leafy green bits at the base of the flower. Like there are 5 petals in a rose, there's also 5 sepals, and they're usually long and pointy like this. You can get buttercups and roses confused a lot of the time because they can look very similar. But if I'm looking at something and I think it's, oh man, is this a rose or a buttercup? Flip the flower upside down and you'll see these pointy sepals, and you can say, okay, I know that that's a rose. Got 5 petals. It often has many stamens, and that's exactly what those are right here. Again, I'm not about to count those. It's more than 10. And it often has many ovaries. If you look closely here, you can kind of see that there's little circles throughout here, and those are all individual ovaries. Cool. So that's the rose family. Now you know you'd be able to recognize dozens of species in Michigan. Next is the mustard family. This particular family has symmetrical flowers, so you can cut them in any way and they'll still be symmetric. They always have 4 petals. This family includes broccoli and kale, a lot of the foods that we eat, a lot of the vegetables that we eat, including like the mustard, as well as a lot of really beautiful spring ephemeral native flowers. This one here is, I believe, cutleaf toothwort. But they always have 4 petals. They also always have 6 stamens. You can see that here. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they're always set up like that. There's 4 long ones. How do I usually do this? There's 4 long ones and then 2 little ones on either side. You'd love to see it every time. You can know who you're looking at based on that. And then it's always got 1 ovary. That's the little purple bit that comes up in the very middle of the stamens. It's always just got 1. Now look at that, mustards, a whole other family that you just know some key characteristics on. Next is mint, one of my favorites. They're always herbaceous. Mints aren't woody. They always have opposite leaves. Remember we talked about opposite. There's this leaf and he's always got a buddy on the other side, right where he meets the stem. The leaves are always simple. There's no complexity to their leaves that's going to have them have extra leaflets. They've got square stems. If you roll them in your fingers, they've got square stems and they sure smell good, as you might already know. And then their flowers are always asymmetrical. They vary in their shape and size, but they're always asymmetric. And then finally, we'll look at the pea family. another huge family, a pan-global family. They can be woody and herbaceous. They're super diverse. They're always alternate leaved. And their leaves are I believe, only compound. And then their leaves or their flowers are also asymmetric. Yeah, especially the majority of the ones that you're going to be seeing are asymmetric like this. And the stamens are countable. Often they are hidden in the flowers, but if you're able to see them, they kind of come off in this strange fashion, but you can count them. And now you know four families in hundreds of different species just with those key characteristics. We looked at the major characteristics of the stem, of the leaves, of the flowers. You can go out and start looking at plants and flowers, whether it's in the winter or in the summer, and start seeing these characteristics and what those patterns are for each of the plants and how they follow through. I would suggest moving forward, either of these books. I love both of them. Botany in a Day. This one talks about looking at patterns of plants like we just were today. Going to a specific family like we looked at with rose, mint, pea, and we had the fourth one. We looked at how you can identify them based on their key characteristics. And then the Wildflower Guide is a good pocket guide. If you're moving forward with specific families, I would suggest learning asters, the parsley family, lily family, and grass family. If you know those and the four other we talked about today, then you'll know thousands of species individually. And then ultimately, get outside and practice. You're never going to learn this stuff without a bunch of practice. Thanks, everybody. I had such a great time, and I hope you learned a lot.
All right, thank you so much, Abbie, for sharing all of that with us. If anyone has questions, you can drop them in the Q&A in the bottom. I'm not seeing any yet. There's also a raise hand function if you'd rather just hop on and tell us, or you can put your questions in the chat. Abbie, I noticed a lot of those plant parts can be pretty small. Do you usually bring like a magnifying glass or a hand lens, or what tools do you bring with you when you're going out to identify plants?
Yeah, great question. So I certainly always bring my hand lens. It's just a little jeweler's loop that you can get on Amazon for like $5. And it helps a lot with looking at those tiny bits like the stamens or the ovaries.
I'm seeing one question about controlling horse nettle and sumac. Ed, we will reach out to you about that separately from this, I think.
Now, if you're looking at plants and you're looking at these different characteristics, you've got your field guides and you're just, man, I don't know, I still don't know what I'm looking at or where to go to next from here. I would suggest a couple of things. First, if you think you have an idea of what it might be, you can go to, I'm going to put it in the chat, michiganflora.net, where it has a lot of really great information about any particular plant that is found in Michigan, and it has a lot of really great photos as well. Or you can certainly send me a picture. My information is here. Send a picture to me, or Michigan Natural Features Inventories is a resource, or MSU Extension. The best way to get a picture to people to help with identification is taking photos of the things we talked about today.
Seeing one question from Paul, what's your favorite plant ID app?
That's a great question. There's a ton of them out there. I think my favorite one is iNaturalist, mostly because when if I'm gonna go somewhere, or if it's outside of the flower season, like winter or something, I can navigate to different areas on their map and pull up things from other times and see, what sort of plants are in this place that I'm about to go visit, or what would be flowering, what's flowering in September. I like it for that, and I've also just found that their suggestions are pretty accurate, or certainly helpful. There's also a level of social media aspect to it too, where I can put up a picture, I can guess, and then other people can guess on it too, and come up with a kind of crowdsource some answers. But their iNaturalist also has, I think it's Seek. Seek is the other one that they're a part of, and that's a really good one too. And they both feed into the same information, same database, I believe.
How good are those identification apps in general?
It's a good question. It's as good as the information that's put into it. So it only gets better as time goes on, and as more people are putting in more information and answering what species they're looking at. From my personal experience, I've noticed that they are pretty accurate. iNaturalist will also filter out what's generally in your area. So if you take a picture of a plant, you're not getting a suggestion from the tropics. You're getting something from your area.
I'm not seeing any more questions. If anyone does have more questions, I've put Abbie's email, invasivesmgmt@vanburencd.org, in the chat. Let's switch over to my screen real quick. Right. Yep, here we are. Hold on. We'll get there. We'll get there. All right. So thanks again for attending this year's Backyard Symposium. We'll hope you'll join us for more of these sessions. We'll have another webinar every day this week at 2 o'clock. These webinars are also being recorded, and they'll be posted to youtube.com or Van Buren CD on YouTube. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at vanburencd.org using the contacts tab on that page. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We're at Van Buren CD on both. We hope you'll join us tomorrow for our own Lucas Hartman, who's going to be talking about Soils 101, composition and conservation. Just a good old intro to soils. And I hope everyone has a great rest of this beautiful sunny day.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for coming out.